A deafening crash echoed through the 48th floor of the Blackwood Tower as Maxwell Thornhill hurled his custom-made crystal paperweight against the wall. Shards scattered across the polished marble floor like fallen stars. "What do you mean I have to get married within 30 days? Maxwell's voice cut through the air like a steel blade. His steel-gray eyes narrowed at his father's lawyer, who clutched his briefcase like a shield. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thornhill, but your father's will is quite clear," Peter Abernathy stammered, adjusting his tortoiseshell glasses. Section 7, paragraph 12 states that to inherit Thornhill Enterprises and your father's $4.2 billion estate, you must be married by your 35th birthday, which is exactly 30 days from today. Maxwell loosened his Italian silk tie, feeling the walls of his glass castle closing in. At 34, he had built a reputation as New York's most eligible and unobtainable bachelor. Women were accessories, not necessities. Marriage was for the weak, the sentimental fools his father had always accused him of despising. "This is absurd. I can contest this," Maxwell growled, pacing like a caged panther. "You could," Abernathy nodded cautiously, "but litigation would take years. In the meantime, your cousin Richard would assume control as stipulated in the contingency clause." Maxwell froze. Richard. The thought of his smug, incompetent cousin sitting in his chair, dismantling everything he'd built, made his blood boil. He needed a plan. Fast. "Find a loophole," he ordered, turning to the Manhattan skyline that stretched before him like his own personal kingdom. "There's one more thing," Abernathy added hesitantly. "Your father specified that the marriage must appear genuine. The board will be watching. If they suspect any derangement, they can vote to trigger the contingency clause." That night, as rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, Maxwell poured himself a third scotch. His mind raced through potential candidates, socialites, models, business associates. But everyone in his circle knew him. Too well. They'd want contracts, prenups, guarantees. The board would see through it immediately. He needed someone unknown. Someone with no connections to his world. Someone desperate enough to agree to his terms without asking too many questions. The answer came to him as lightning split the sky. His assistant had mentioned the company's janitorial service was being replaced. Tomorrow, Maxwell Thornhill would visit his company's basement for the first time in his life. Olivia Parker was having the day from hell. First, her ancient vacuum cleaner had died mid-shift. Then she'd received notice that her company had lost the Thornhill Enterprises contract. Now, as she emptied trash bins on the executive floor at 3 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. "Eviction notice posted today. 60 days. As the single mother of a 7-year-old daughter with a rare medical condition and mountains of medical debt, Olivia felt her chest tighten with panic. The janitorial job had barely covered rent. Losing it meant disaster. She was so distracted she didn't notice the tall figure watching her from the shadowed doorway of the corner office. "You work efficiently," a deep voice observed. Olivia jumped, nearly knocking over her cart. Standing before her was Maxwell Thornhill himself, the notoriously ruthless CEO whose face graced business magazines and gossip columns alike. What was he doing here at this hour? "Mr. Thornhill, I'm sorry, I didn't—" "Don't apologize," he interrupted, studying her with calculated interest. "What's your name?" "Olivia Parker, sir." Something flickered in his eyes, a predatory gleam that made her instinctively step back. "Olivia Parker," he repeated, as if testing the name. "I have a proposition for you." Little did Olivia know that those 5 words would change her life forever, and that the man standing before her had already decided she would become Mrs. Thornhill by the end of the month, whether she wanted to or not. Olivia Parker found herself sitting in a leather chair worth more than her car, facing Maxwell Thornhill across his immaculate desk at 3:30 a.m. The city lights twinkled like jewels behind him, casting his sharp features in dramatic shadows. "Let me get this straight," she said, her voice remarkably steady despite the absurdity of the situation. "You want to marry me? A janitor you just met?" Maxwell's lips curved into what might have been a smile on anyone else. On him, It looked like a shark sizing up its prey. A temporary arrangement, he clarified, sliding a contract across the polished mahogany. 1 year of marriage. You play the devoted wife at company functions. Keep our arrangement confidential. In return, he named a figure that made Olivia's knees weak. That's more money than I'd make in 20 years, she whispered. Precisely. Maxwell leaned forward, the overhead light glinting off his platinum watch. I need a wife to inherit my father's company. You need money. It's a simple business transaction. Olivia's mind raced. The medical bills for her daughter, Sophie's rare immunodeficiency disorder, had already forced them into a tiny apartment in a questionable neighborhood. The specialized treatment Sophie needed wasn't covered by insurance, and with the janitorial contract ending. Why me? She asked, suspicion finally breaking through her shock. You could have anyone. Someone from my social circle would expect more than money. They'd want status, connections, a permanent claim to the Thornhill fortune. His gray eyes assessed her like a balance sheet. You're attractive enough to be believable as my choice, but not connected enough to be a threat. Olivia flinched at the cold calculation in his voice. This is insane, she said, standing up. I can't just… Your daughter, Maxwell interrupted, making Olivia freeze. Sophie, isn't it? 7 years old. Rare immunodeficiency disorder requiring specialized treatment at Westlake Medical Center. The blood drained from Olivia's face. How do you know about my daughter? Maxwell shrugged, examining his manicured nails. I had my security team run a background check while you were being escorted up. I know about Sophie's condition. I know about the $217,000 in medical debt. I know your landlord just posted an eviction notice. He stood, circling the desk to stand uncomfortably close. I also know that the experimental treatment Dr. Kensington has recommended isn't covered by any insurance plan. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. The experimental treatment was Sophie's best hope, but at $375,000 it might as well have been on the moon. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a businessman, he corrected, and I'm offering you the solution to all your problems. Maxwell walked to the window, his reflection superimposed over the glittering skyline. I'll throw in full medical, coverage for Sophie, the best doctors, the experimental treatment, a new apartment in a good school district. He turned, his expression unreadable. All you have to do is say yes. Across town, in a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper, Sophie Parker slept peacefully, her favorite stuffed elephant clutched to her chest, her blonde curls, so like her mother's, splayed across the pillow. Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who watched Sophie during Olivia's night shifts, dozed in the armchair nearby. Sophie stirred, coughing in her sleep. The sound was like a knife to Olivia's heart every time she heard it. Back in the gleaming tower, Olivia stared at the contract before her. Her hands trembled as she reached for the pen. If I agree to this, she began. When? Maxwell corrected with irritating confidence. If, Olivia insisted, I have conditions of my own. Maxwell raised an eyebrow, clearly not accustomed to being negotiated with. Sophie knows nothing about this arrangement. As far as she's concerned, we met normally and fell in love. I won't have her thinking her mother sold herself, even if that's exactly what I'm doing. Maxwell considered this, then nodded curtly. Also, Olivia continued, finding courage in her desperation, I want the medical payments and treatment for Sophie secured in a separate account that you can't touch even if our arrangement ends early. Fine, Maxwell agreed too quickly. Anything else? Olivia took a deep breath. Yes, I want it in writing that you'll never make me. She blushed, unable to finish the sentence. For the first time, Maxwell Thornhill looked genuinely amused. Sexual obligations aren't part of this contract, Miss Parker. I have no interest in forcing myself on an unwilling woman. There are plenty who would be more than willing. The casual arrogance made Olivia want to throw something at him, but she restrained herself. There was too much at stake. 1 year, she said finally. Then a quiet divorce, and we never see each other again. 1 year, Maxwell confirmed, his eyes gleaming with victory. As dawn broke over New York City, Olivia Parker signed away her freedom on the dotted line, unaware that Maxwell Thornhill had fabricated most of what he'd told her. There was no requirement that his bride be unknown to society. In fact, his father would have preferred a strategic alliance. The terms of the will only required marriage, with no stipulations about its appearance of authenticity. But Maxwell had learned from his father that the best negotiations happened when the other party was desperate and uninformed. And he'd always enjoyed playing games. What he couldn't have anticipated was the way Olivia's piercing blue eyes had momentarily made him forget his rehearsed speech, or how her quiet dignity in the face of his manipulations had stirred something unfamiliar in his chest, something that felt uncomfortably like respect. 3 weeks after signing her life away, Olivia stood in front of a full-length mirror in what was now her bedroom in Maxwell's penthouse, barely recognizing herself. The woman staring back wore a Valentino gown that cost more than her previous year's salary, her honey blonde hair styled in elegant waves by a personal stylist who had arrived at dawn. "You clean up well?" Maxwell remarked, appearing in the doorway. His tuxedo fit him like it had been painted on, highlighting his athletic build. The board members and their wives will be suitably impressed. "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" Olivia asked, adjusting the unfamiliar weight of diamond earrings. "Because if so, you might want to work on your delivery." A ghost of a smile crossed Maxwell's face. "It's an observation. Tonight is crucial. The engagement announcement at the Thornhill Foundation Gala needs to be convincing." In the 3 weeks since their arrangement, Olivia had moved into the guest suite of Maxwell's penthouse. Sophie had been enrolled in the prestigious Wellington Academy, her medical care transferred to the city's top specialists. The little girl was thriving, delighted by her new bedroom with star projector ceiling and the prospect of a new daddy who sent elaborate gifts but was conveniently traveling for business. The fabricated romance had been carefully constructed by Maxwell's PR team, a chance meeting at a charity event where Olivia had allegedly been volunteering, followed by a whirlwind courtship. Society columnists were buzzing about the mysterious woman who had captured New York's most notorious bachelor. "Remember the story," Maxwell instructed as their private elevator descended. "We met at the Children's Hospital benefit. You were volunteering. I was donating. Our eyes met across the room. And you were so captivated by my natural charm and beauty that you immediately asked me to dance," Olivia finished dryly. "I know the script, Maxwell. I've been rehearsing it all week." The elevator doors opened to the private garage where a gleaming Bentley waited. As the chauffeur held the door, Maxwell placed his hand on the small of Olivia's back, a practiced gesture that sent an unexpected shiver up her spine. "Don't look so terrified," he murmured. "No one will believe we're madly in love if you flinch every time I touch you." "I'm not terrified," she shot back. "I'm trying not to laugh at the absurdity of anyone believing that a man who refers to emotions as inefficient distractions could be madly in love." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "You'd be surprised what people will believe when it's what they want to see." The Thornhill Foundation Gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, transformed for the evening into a glittering wonderland of ice sculptures and cascading white orchids. As they ascended the grand staircase, every head turned. "Smile," Maxwell whispered, his arm firmly around her waist. "You're the envy of every woman here. And you're the envy of every man who values arm candy over substance," Olivia replied through her perfect smile, making Maxwell choke back what sounded suspiciously like a laugh. The evening became a blur of introductions, champagne flutes, and practiced stories. To Olivia's surprise, she found herself warming to the role. Years of customer service jobs had taught her how to charm strangers, and the genuine interest she took in people made them respond in kind. Across the room, Maxwell watched with grudging admiration as Olivia charmed a notoriously difficult board member's wife. Her laugh, genuine, not the practiced tinkle of the socialites he usually escorted, carried over the string quartet. There was something refreshing about her authenticity. "She's not what I expected for you, Max," said a familiar voice. His younger sister, Charlotte, sidled up beside him, champagne in hand. "She's actually nice." "Your point?" Maxwell asked, eyes still on Olivia. "My point is," Charlotte said, studying her brother carefully, "she's looking at you like she might actually like you, which makes me wonder what lies you've told the poor girl." Maxwell's jaw tightened. Charlotte had always seen through him. "Our arrangement is mutually beneficial," he said coldly. Charlotte hummed skeptically. "Well, whatever game you're playing, be careful. That one doesn't strike me as the type who stays broken if you break her. She's the type who rebuilds and comes back stronger." Before Maxwell could respond, the orchestra struck up a waltz. Time for the performance's crescendo. He crossed to Olivia, extending his hand with practiced charm. "May I have this dance, my love?" The endearment felt foreign on his tongue, but not as uncomfortable as he'd expected. As he led her onto the dance floor, Maxwell was acutely aware of all eyes on them. This was the moment to seal their deception. He pulled her close, closer than necessary, noting with satisfaction how perfectly she fit against him. "Everyone's watching," he murmured against her ear. "Time to make them believe." What happened next caught him completely off guard. Olivia looked up at him with a softness in her eyes he hadn't seen before. She reached up, gently brushing an imaginary speck from his lapel, her touch lingering. "You know what I've learned about performances?" she whispered, her lips curved in a smile that seemed meant only for him. "The best ones contain a grain of truth." Then she leaned up and kissed him. Not the chaste peck they had rehearsed, but something deeper, something that made Maxwell's carefully constructed walls tremble. Applause erupted around them. In the corner, his father's lawyer nodded approvingly beside the board chairman. The kiss had sealed their performance perfectly. What troubled Maxwell as he drove them home in silence later that night was not that Olivia had improvised. It was that for a moment he had forgotten they were acting at all. Back at the penthouse, Olivia kicked off her heels in the elevator, exhaustion finally claiming her. "We convinced them," she said, satisfaction in her voice. "Even that terrible Mrs. Harrington who kept trying to catch us in a lie." Maxwell nodded distractedly, loosening his bow tie. "You were convincing." "I was an understudy in my college theater program," Olivia shrugged. "I know how to sell a role." As the elevator doors opened to the penthouse, a small voice called, "Out, Mommy!" Sophie, who should have been asleep hours ago, raced toward them in unicorn pajamas, her face alight with excitement. The night nurse followed, apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Miss Parker. She insisted on waiting up to show you her project." Olivia knelt, evening gown pooling around her, to embrace her daughter. "What project, sweetheart?" Sophie proudly held up a crayon drawing of 3 figures holding hands, a tall man in black, a woman in a triangle dress, and a small girl. "It's us, our family," she announced, "for Daddy's desk at work." Olivia froze, her eyes meeting Maxwell's over Sophie's head. Something unreadable passed across his face as he looked at the crude drawing of their family. For the first time since this charade began, Maxwell Thornhill looked genuinely shaken. 2 months into their marriage, Olivia stood in Maxwell's kitchen. No, their kitchen, she corrected herself, making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs while Sophie giggled at the island counter. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in a golden glow. "Make the T-Rex bigger, Mommy," Sophie exclaimed, her health visibly improved in the weeks since starting Dr. Kensington's experimental treatment. "A bigger T-Rex? That's a tall order," Olivia laughed, pouring batter into the sizzling pan. "I believe in your culinary artistry," came Maxwell's voice from the doorway, startling them both. He stood there in running clothes, hair damp with sweat, a sight that still caught Olivia off guard. The ruthless CEO looked almost human like this, approachable even. "Max!" Sophie squealed, launching herself at him. To Olivia's continued amazement, Maxwell caught the little girl effortlessly, swinging her around before setting her back on her stool. Such casual physical affection would have been unimaginable 2 months ago when he'd regard Sophie with the wary distance of a man encountering an alien species. "I made this for you," Sophie announced, pushing a colorful beaded bracelet toward him. "Ms. Williams helped me in art class. It has protection powers." "Protection powers?" Maxwell asked seriously, examining the mismatched beads. "From bad business? Deals?" Sophie nodded sagely. "Mommy says you make lots of those." Olivia nearly dropped the spatula as Maxwell's eyes shot to hers, amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "Does she now?" he murmured, slipping the bracelet onto his wrist. "Well, I'd better wear it to my meeting today, then." As Sophie returned to her coloring book, humming happily, Maxwell moved beside Olivia at the stove, lowering his voice. "Bad business deals?" he questioned, eyebrow raised. "I might have muttered something when that merger fell through last week, and you stomped around the penthouse like a grizzly with a thorn in its paw," Olivia admitted. To her surprise, Maxwell laughed, a genuine sound she'd been hearing more frequently. "Fair assessment, though I prefer to think of myself as a wounded lion." "Of course you do." Olivia rolled her eyes, fighting a smile as she flipped a pancake. "Lions, kings of the jungle and all that." "Actually," Maxwell said, reaching around her for a coffee mug, his chest briefly pressing against her back. "Lions live in savannas, not jungles, a common misconception." "Thank you, National Geographic," Olivia quipped, ignoring the flutter in her stomach at his proximity. "Your pancakes will be cold if you don't shower soon." Maxwell's phone chimed, and his relaxed demeanor instantly shifted as he checked the message. "Rain check on breakfast. Richard's called an emergency board meeting." "Richard? Your cousin?" Olivia frowned. Since their wedding, a small but elegant affair that had dominated society pages, Richard Thornhill had made no secret of his resentment. As the former heir apparent before Maxwell's hasty marriage, his demotion had not been taken gracefully. "The very same," Maxwell confirmed, already heading toward his bedroom. "He's been reviewing old acquisition files. Says he's found concerning discrepancies." "What does that mean?" Olivia asked, worry creeping into her voice. Maxwell's expression darkened. "It means he's still looking for a way to discredit me." An hour later, impeccably dressed in a bespoke suit, Maxwell paused at the penthouse door. Normally, he'd simply leave, already mentally processing the day's agenda. Today, he hesitated. Sophie was helping Olivia load the dishwasher, standing on a step stool and carefully handing plates one by one. They were singing some nonsensical song about dishwashing robots, both laughing when Olivia got the made-up lyrics wrong. The scene created an unfamiliar ache in Maxwell's chest. In just 2 months, his sterile penthouse had transformed. Children's books cluttered the once minimalist coffee table. Refrigerator art held pride of place alongside priceless paintings. The guest room was now an explosion of pink and purple, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Most disconcerting of all, he didn't hate it. "Max," Sophie called, spotting him. "You forgot your protection bracelet." She raced over, the beaded creation clutched in her small hand. Maxwell knelt to her level, another thing he never did before, kneeling for anyone, and allowed her to slip it onto his wrist. "Now you'll win against Cousin Richard," she said firmly. "Sophie," Olivia admonished gently, "we don't talk about winning against family members." "But Max said that I need to head out," Maxwell interrupted smoothly, standing and straightening his tie. "Board meetings, very boring. You wouldn't like them, Soph." As he turned to leave, Olivia caught his arm. "Call if you need anything," she said quietly. "Even if it's just to vent about Richard." The genuine concern in her eyes made something shift inside him, like tectonic plates realigning. On impulse, he leaned down and pressed a kiss to her cheek, their first unscripted, unpublicized display of affection. "Don't wait up," he murmured before striding to the elevator, leaving Olivia staring after him, fingers touching the spot where his lips had been. The board meeting was exactly as bad as Maxwell had anticipated. Richard had indeed found discrepancies. Old shell companies Maxwell's father had used for questionable dealings now linked to recent offshore accounts. These transactions occurred after Uncle Harrison's death, Richard emphasized, sliding documents across the polished table, while Maxwell had interim control before the will was executed. The implication was clear. Maxwell had been siphoning company funds. These accounts were automated continuations of my father's tax structures, Maxwell explained calmly, though his pulse raced. I closed them once I discovered them. Convenient, Richard sneered. Just like your sudden marriage to a cleaning lady. The room fell silent. Even Richard's allies on the board shifted uncomfortably at the naked contempt in his voice. Maxwell rose slowly, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. My wife's former occupation is irrelevant to these proceedings. What is relevant is your desperate attempt to undermine my leadership using my father's questionable business practices. Practices I have spent the past 5 years dismantling. He turned to the board members. You all received the ethics compliance report last quarter. The offshore accounts in question were closed and all funds rerouted to legitimate operations. If Richard had bothered to check the following month's records, he would have seen this. By meeting's end, Richard's accusations had been thoroughly debunked, his credibility damaged. As the boardroom emptied, Maxwell remained seated, fatigue washing over him. Peter Abernathy, his father's old lawyer, lingered behind. Your father would have been proud today, he said, gathering his papers. You defended the company while protecting its reputation. Very Harrison Thornhill. Maxwell stiffened. I'm nothing like my father. Abernathy studied him thoughtfully. No, you're not. Harrison would have destroyed Richard publicly. You showed restraint. He paused. Marriage suits you, Maxwell. Your wife and her daughter, they've changed you. It's a temporary arrangement, Maxwell said automatically, though the words felt hollow. Abernathy chuckled. Of course. Though I must say, for a business arrangement, you two were quite convincing. At the Peterson charity auction last week, the way you look at her, he trailed off, shrugging. Well, you were always an excellent strategist. That night, Maxwell returned to the penthouse late, expecting darkness and silence. Instead, he found Olivia curled on the living room sofa, bathed in the soft glow of a table lamp, a book open in her lap. You're still up, he observed, loosening his tie. I was worried, she admitted. You never called. Something warm bloomed in Maxwell's chest at the simple admission. When was the last time anyone had worried about him? Richard's accusations fell apart, he said, pouring himself a scotch. But he made it personal, brought you into it. Olivia set her book aside. What did he say? Nothing worth repeating. That bad, huh? She patted the space beside her. Sit. You look exhausted. To his own surprise, Maxwell obeyed, sinking onto the sofa. More surprising still was how natural it felt when Olivia reached over and began massaging the tension from his shoulders. You don't have to do that, he murmured, eyes closing involuntarily as her fingers worked magic on his knotted muscles. I know, she replied simply. I want to. The quiet admission hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address. This wasn't in their contract. This wasn't part of their performance. I keep waiting, Olivia said softly, after a long moment. For what? Maxwell asked, eyes still closed. For the cruel, heartless man I met that first night to return. Her hands stilled on his shoulders. But I'm starting to think he might be the performance, not the man I've been living with these past 2 months. Maxwell opened his eyes, turning to face her. The vulnerability in her expression made his carefully constructed defenses crumble. Olivia, The elevator chimed, interrupting whatever dangerous confession had been about to escape his lips. The doors slid open to reveal Charlotte, her expression grim. We have a problem, she announced without preamble. Richard's gone to the tabloids. Tomorrow's headline? Thornhill heirs marriage of convenience. Sources close to the billionaire confirmed the hasty marriage was arranged solely to satisfy inheritance requirements. Charlotte read from her phone, pacing Maxwell's home office. The janitorial worker and her sick child were selected for their desperation and willingness to participate in the charade. Maxwell's hands curled into fists, his knuckles white. Richard will regret this. There's more, Charlotte continued grimly. According to documents obtained exclusively by this publication, the arrangement included predetermined divorce after exactly 1 year of marriage. He has a copy of the contract, Maxwell realized, ice sliding down his spine. How? The answer hit him immediately. Sandra Voss, his personal attorney who had drawn up the document. She'd worked closely with Richard before Maxwell's promotion. I've already called the PR team, Charlotte said. They're preparing a statement denying everything, your word against Richard's. But Maxwell wasn't listening anymore. His attention was fixed on the doorway, where Olivia stood frozen, her face ashen. Predetermined divorce? She whispered. Desperation? Is that really how you see us? How you've always seen us? Charlotte winced. I'll give you two some privacy, she murmured, slipping past Olivia with an apologetic glance. In the loaded silence, Maxwell struggled to find words. For a man who routinely negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, he suddenly felt completely out of his depth. Those aren't my words, he finally said, gesturing to Charlotte's phone she'd left on his desk. That's Richard trying to hurt me through you. But they're based on truth, aren't they? Olivia stepped into the office, arms wrapped protectively around herself. You did select me because I was desperate. There is a contract with a predetermined divorce date. I was chosen because I was, what was the phrase? Attractive enough to be believable, but not connected enough to be a threat. Maxwell flinched, recognizing his own callous words from their first meeting. That was before, he said quietly. Before what, Maxwell? Before you realized I could be useful for more than just satisfying your inheritance requirements. Before Sophie's drawings started to clutter your perfect penthouse? Before you realized playing family might actually be enjoyable? Her voice broke on the last word, tears threatening to spill. Do you know what hurts the most? I started to believe it. Not the fake story we told everyone else, but a different story I was telling myself. That maybe this wasn't just business for you anymore. That maybe you actually cared. The raw pain in her voice cut through Maxwell's defenses like nothing ever had. He took a step toward her, but she backed away. Don't, she said, holding up a hand. Sophie and I will be gone by morning. No. The force of Maxwell's response surprised them both. You can't leave. Sophie's treatment is covered through the end of the year according to our contract, Olivia finished bitterly. Don't worry, you'll have fulfilled your legal obligations. This isn't about legal obligations, Maxwell exploded, frustration finally breaking through his controlled facade. This is about Sophie calling me daddy last week when I tucked her in, and how I didn't correct her. This is about how I can't sleep if you're not home, because the penthouse feels wrong without your ridiculous true crime podcast playing in the background. This is about how for the first time in my life I'm thinking about someone else's happiness before my own. He ran a hand through his hair, agitated. You want to know why I chose you that night? Yes, you were desperate. Yes, you needed the money. But I watched you for 20 minutes before I approached you. 20 minutes of you working harder than anyone I'd ever seen, with more care and dignity than anyone in my executive suite. You weren't just some random selection, Olivia. Even then, I admired you. Olivia stared at him, speechless. You never told me that. Because I didn't understand it myself, he admitted. I've spent my entire life believing that emotions were a weakness, that caring about people made you vulnerable. My father taught me that, and I was a star pupil. He moved toward her again, and this time she didn't back away. These past months have been the best of my life, and they've terrified me. Because I didn't plan for this. I didn't plan to care about your opinions or look forward to your sarcastic comebacks. I didn't plan to miss you when you visit your mother, on Sundays. I didn't plan to fall in love with your daughter. He stopped just short of saying he'd fallen in love with Olivia too. The words hovered unspoken between them. "So what do we do now?" Olivia asked quietly. "Tomorrow, everyone will know our marriage is a sham." Maxwell's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The PR team, no doubt, waiting for approval on their damage control strategy. He silenced it without looking. "Let them think what they want," he said, suddenly decisive. "I'm done playing by my father's rules, or Richard's, or anyone else's." Before Olivia could respond, Sophie's voice called from the hallway, small and frightened. "Mommy? Max? Why is everyone yelling?" The little girl appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant, eyes wide with concern. Maxwell and Olivia exchanged a look that contained volumes. Worry for Sophie, fear of hurting her. The shared knowledge that whatever they decided now would affect her most of all. "Come here, sweetheart," Olivia said, kneeling to gather Sophie into her arms. "Everything's okay." "Are you and Max fighting?" Sophie asked, her lower lip trembling. "Is he going away like Daddy did?" The innocent question pierced Maxwell's heart. Sophie's biological father had abandoned her before her first birthday, a fact Olivia had shared one night over late-night ice cream when Sophie was already asleep. Before Olivia could answer, Maxwell knelt beside them, meeting Sophie at eye level. "I'm not going anywhere, Soph," he said firmly. "But there might be some changes coming." "What kind of changes?" Sophie asked suspiciously. Maxwell glanced at Olivia, seeking permission to continue. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Well," Maxwell began carefully, "some people are saying mean things about me and your mom. They're saying we don't really love each other." Sophie's brow furrowed. "But that's stupid. You do love each other. You look at Mommy the same way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book." The simple observation, delivered with a child's absolute certainty, hung in the air between them. Maxwell felt heat rise to his face as Olivia's eyes widened. "And," Sophie continued matter-of-factly, "you kiss when you think I'm not looking." "What?" Olivia sputtered, looking mortified. "Sophie, we don't—" "Like yesterday when I was supposed to be napping, but I got up for water and saw you in the kitchen," Sophie explained, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "Max kissed you and you smiled really big after." Maxwell remembered the moment vividly, a spontaneous kiss after Olivia had teased him about his inability to load the dishwasher properly. It had felt so natural, he hadn't even questioned it. "Out of the mouths of babes," he murmured, a smile tugging at his lips despite the gravity of their situation. Sophie yawned suddenly, reminding them of the late hour. "Can we finish talking about this tomorrow? I'm sleepy." "Of course, sweetheart," Olivia said, relief evident in her voice at the temporary reprieve. "Let's get you back to bed." As Sophie headed toward her bedroom, she turned back. "You're not really going to leave, are you, Max? Because I put you in my family tree project for school, and Mrs. Winters already hung it up in the classroom." The simplicity of the question cut through all the complexity of adult concerns, contracts and tabloids and inheritance, straight to what truly mattered. "No, Sophie," Maxwell answered, surprised by the thickness in his throat. "I'm not going anywhere." After tucking Sophie back into bed, Maxwell and Olivia found themselves in the living room, the city lights twinkling below them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The tabloid story, the contract, Richard's betrayal, it all seemed to belong to another world outside the sanctuary of their home. "Did you mean what you said to Sophie?" Olivia asked finally, breaking the silence. "About not going anywhere?" Maxwell moved to the window, his reflection superimposed over the skyline just as it had been the night he'd proposed their arrangement. But the man staring back at him now was nearly unrecognizable from the cold, calculating businessman of 4 months ago. "I meant it," he said. "But the question is, did you mean what you said about leaving in the morning?" Olivia joined him at the window, close enough that he could smell the faint vanilla of her shampoo. "I was hurt. And scared. Finding out that the whole world is about to know your marriage is a sham isn't exactly a pleasant experience." "Is it, though?" Maxwell turned to face her. "A sham?" The question hung between them, loaded with everything they'd been avoiding acknowledging. It started as one, Olivia admitted. But now, I don't know what this is, Maxwell. All I know is the thought of packing up and leaving makes me feel like I can't breathe. Then don't leave. He reached for her hands, holding them between his own. Tear up the contract, stay not because you have to, but because you want to. Because Sophie deserves a father who adores her and would do anything to protect her. Because I'm a better man with you than I ever was without you. Olivia's eyes searched his. And when the year is up? What then? To hell with the year, Maxwell said with sudden fierceness. To hell with the contract and the inheritance and all of it. Do you know what I realized today when Richard threatened everything? It wasn't the company I was afraid of losing. He cupped her face gently in his hands. It was you. Both of you. My family. The words seemed to release something that had been building between them for months. Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Family, she repeated, as if testing the word. Is that what we are? It's what I want us to be, Maxwell admitted. For real this time. No contracts, no pretending, no expiration date. Just us figuring it out day by day like everyone else. Olivia's smile widened. Maxwell Thornhill, willingly entering a situation without an exit strategy. I never thought I'd see the day. I never thought I'd see the day I'd fall in love with a woman who uses my $3,000 coffee machine to make hot chocolate, he countered, his thumbs gently brushing away her tears. Olivia's breath caught. Is that what this is? Love? Maxwell considered the question with the same careful attention he gave to major business decisions. It's the only explanation that makes sense. Nothing else could make me want to watch those terrible baking shows you love, or spend an entire Sunday building a princess castle for Sophie, or look forward to coming home instead of staying at the office. He shook his head in wonder. I didn't believe in love. I thought it was something people invented to explain temporary chemical reactions, but this doesn't feel temporary. Olivia laughed softly. Only you would analyze falling in love like a scientific phenomenon. Old habits, he admitted sheepishly. But I'm learning new ones. Olivia reached up, tracing the lines of his face with gentle fingers. I need to hear you say it, Maxwell. Not implied, not analyzed. Just the words. Maxwell took a deep breath, stepping into vulnerability with the same courage he brought to every challenge in his life. I love you, Olivia Parker. Not for what you do for me, or what you bring to my life, but for who you are. The woman who challenges me, who makes me laugh, who sees through my defenses and doesn't run away. The woman I want to build a life with. A real life, not a performance. The smile that bloomed across Olivia's face was like sunrise breaking over the horizon. I love you too, she whispered, rising on tiptoes to press her lips to his. Kai. Next morning, New York woke to tabloid headlines screaming about the Thornhill marriage of convenience. But by afternoon, those same tabloids were scrambling to update their stories with photos of Maxwell Thornhill holding a press conference, his arm firmly around his wife's waist, his stepdaughter perched on his shoulders. My cousin Richard has his own interpretation of events, Maxwell told the assembled reporters with remarkable calm. I have mine. The truth is simple. I married the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, and every day I'm grateful she took a chance on me. As flashbulbs popped around them, Olivia squeezed his hand in silent support. Now, if you'll excuse us, Maxwell concluded, we have a princess tea party scheduled, and my daughter informs me that tardiness is unacceptable for royal events. 6 months later, Richard Thornhill received an invitation to Sophie's 8th birthday party, personally signed by Maxwell. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of something like it. As for Olivia and Maxwell, they renewed their vows on their first anniversary, not because a contract required it, but because some performances become so real that they cease to be performances at all. And sometimes, the cruelest of intentions can lead to the most unexpected of happy endings. The crisp autumn air cut through Manhattan's financial district as sharply as Blake Thornton's words cut through his employees. The 50-floor Thompson Tower, named after himself, of course, gleamed in the morning sunlight, its glass facade reflecting a perfect blue sky that belied the storm brewing within. "Unacceptable," Blake's voice thundered across the executive boardroom. His Italian leather shoe tapped an impatient rhythm against the marble floor as he glared at the projection, screen displaying quarterly figures. "I don't pay you people 6 figures to deliver 5-figure results." The assembled executives shifted uncomfortably in their ergonomic chairs, avoiding eye contact with their 38-year-old billionaire boss. Blake ran a hand through his perfectly styled dark hair, the platinum Rolex on his wrist catching the light with each movement. "Jenkins, you have 24 hours to fix this disaster or clear out your desk," he declared, pointing at his trembling CFO. "Anyone else want to join him in the unemployment line?" Silence answered him. With a dismissive wave, Blake ended the meeting, watching as his senior leadership team scrambled out like schoolchildren released from detention. His assistant, Margaret, appeared at his side. "Your 10 a.m. acquisition meeting is set, Mr. Thornton. The Bloom Street bakery owners are waiting in the small conference room." Blake checked his watch. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. I like to keep people waiting. Builds character." Margaret nodded, having long ago learned not to question her boss's tactics. Blake straightened his custom Tom Ford tie and gathered his thoughts. Bloom Street Bakery occupied prime real estate he needed for his next luxury high-rise. The family-owned business had stubbornly refused his previous offers, but everyone had a price. Blake Thornton always got what he wanted. It was simply a matter of adding zeros to the check. Olivia Bennett wiped flour-covered hands on her apron and took a deep breath. The conference room of Thompson Tower couldn't have been more different from the warm, aromatic bakery she'd managed since her parents passed away 3 years ago. Cold, sterile, and intimidating, just like the man who owned it. "He's coming," her brother Daniel whispered, squeezing her hand under the table. "Remember, we agreed to just hear him out." "I know what we agreed," Olivia replied, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. At 32, she'd faced her share of challenges, losing both parents unexpectedly, taking over the family business, raising her teenage brother while he finished high school. But something about Blake Thornton's arrogance made her blood boil in a unique way. The door swung open, and Blake Thornton strode in like he already owned the building, and everything in it, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Olivia's monthly revenue. He didn't bother with introductions. "Let's not waste time," he announced, sliding into his chair across from them. "My previous offer was generous. My new offer is even more so." He slid a folder across the table. $5 million, that's 5 times what your little bakery is worth. Olivia opened the folder, her eyes widening at the figure on the document. "The papers are ready to sign," Blake continued, producing a Mont Blanc pen from his breast pocket. "I can have the funds wired to your account before close of business. Today." Daniel looked at Olivia, clearly tempted. $5 million would change their lives. "Mr. Thornton," Olivia began carefully, "while we appreciate your offer, the bakery isn't just a business to us. It's our family's legacy. Our parents built it from nothing." Blake cut her off with a dismissive laugh. "Legacy doesn't pay bills, Ms. Bennett. Sentimentality is a luxury for those who can afford it." He leaned forward. "Let me be clear. I will have that property. The only question is whether you leave with $5 million or nothing when I buy the building from your landlord and triple your rent." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Our landlord wouldn't sell to you," Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. Blake's smile was predatory. "He already has. Signed the papers yesterday." He turned his attention back to Olivia. "So, Ms. Bennett, would you like to be a millionaire or would you prefer bankruptcy?" Olivia felt her chest tighten, her breath catching. Everything her parents had worked for, everything she'd fought to preserve after their death. This man saw it as nothing more than square footage. "I understand business, Mr. Thornton," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I also understand decency. which is clearly a foreign concept to you. Blake's eyes narrowed. Decency doesn't build empires. And empires don't bake bread? That feeds the soul, Olivia countered. Some things can't be bought. Something flashed in Blake's eyes, surprise perhaps at being challenged. He recovered quickly, reaching into his jacket and pulling out his checkbook. Everyone has a price, Miss Bennett. Name yours. That was when something inside Olivia snapped. Years of grief, struggle, and determination crystallized into a single moment of clarity. She stood slowly, gathering her dignity around her like armor. Not everyone is for sale, Mr. Thornton, she said quietly, and certainly not me. Blake rose to his full height, towering over her. Don't be naive. I could buy and sell people like you 1,000 times over and not dent my fortune. He scribbled on the check, $7 million, final offer. Take it, or watch your precious legacy crumble. He held out the check, waving it inches from her face like one might tempt a dog with a treat. The condescension, the absolute certainty that money could solve everything, that she could be purchased like any other asset, pushed Olivia past her breaking point. The sound of her palm connecting with his cheek echoed in the conference room like a thunderclap. The check fluttered to the floor between them. Blake's hand went to his face, his expression a mixture of shock, outrage, and, most surprisingly, fascination. Nobody, Olivia said, her voice shaking with emotion, has ever bought my dignity, Mr. Thornton, and nobody ever will. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, Daniel scrambling to follow. At the threshold, she turned back to where Blake still stood frozen, the red imprint of her hand blooming on his cheek. You should ice that, she advised calmly. Good day. The conference room door closed behind them with a soft click that seemed to echo throughout the entire tower and throughout Blake Thornton's carefully ordered world. Blake Thornton stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, gingerly touching the faint pink outline still visible on his cheek. 24 hours had passed since Olivia Bennett's palm had connected with his face, yet the sensation lingered, both physically and mentally. Sir, the board members are asking if you'd like to reschedule again. Margaret's voice came through the intercom on his desk. He pressed the button. Tell them 15 minutes, he barked, straightening his tie. This was ridiculous. He was Blake Thornton, the man whose net worth had 9 zeros. The man who closed billion-dollar deals before breakfast. The man who made grown men quiver in boardrooms. And here he was, distracted by a baker with flour under her fingernails. A baker who had dared to touch him, to reject him, to look at him with those fiery hazel eyes like he was nothing more than a petulant child. Blake splashed cold water on his face and took a steadying breath. It was just a slap, not even a particularly hard one at that. So why couldn't he stop thinking about it? About her? Olivia, you've been staring at that sourdough for 10 minutes without moving, Daniel observed, startling his sister from her trance. The dough isn't going to knead itself. Sorry, she murmured, plunging her hands into the sticky mixture. I'm just thinking. About how you slapped the richest man in New York? Daniel leaned against the counter. Because that's all I've been thinking about. Do you think we should get a lawyer? What if he sues us? What if... Daniel. Olivia cut him off. If Blake Thornton wanted to retaliate, we'd know by now. She hoped she sounded more confident than she felt. Besides, he had it coming. Oh, no argument there, Daniel grinned. The look on his face was worth at least $1 million of the dollars you turned down. Olivia laughed despite herself, but her smile quickly faded. I might have cost us everything. We're going to lose the bakery. Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, leaving a flower handprint on her blouse. We'll figure something out. We always do. The bell above the door jingled, and Olivia wiped her hands on her apron, preparing to greet the customer. Instead, she froze at the sight of Margaret, Blake Thornton's impeccably dressed assistant, striding toward the counter. Ms. Bennett, she acknowledged with a tight smile. Mr. Thornton requests your presence at his office tomorrow morning at 9. I don't take orders from Blake Thornton, Olivia replied, her heart racing. Margaret's expression didn't change. He anticipated your response. He asked me to inform you that if you don't appear, he'll be forced to visit you here, and he doubts your customers would appreciate the scene. She placed a business card on the counter. The address is on the card, though I imagine you remember where our building is located. As suddenly as she had appeared, Margaret was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive perfume and the weight of impending doom. Well, Daniel said after a long pause, at least we know he's not ignoring us. Blake's executive floor was quieter than usual the next morning. Word had spread about the mysterious woman who had been escorted to the CEO's office, the same woman who, according to rumors, had left yesterday's meeting in a flurry of dramatic exits and raised voices. Inside his office, Blake paced like a caged lion. He'd rehearsed this conversation countless times since yesterday. He would be calm, collected, and firmly in control. He would make her understand the consequences of her actions. He would... A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Thornton, Ms. Bennett is here," Margaret announced. Blake took his position behind his massive desk. The Manhattan skyline spread out behind him like a kingdom. "Send her in." Olivia Bennett entered his office with her chin high, wearing a simple blue dress that probably cost less than his tie. Yet she carried herself with the dignity of royalty. Blake found himself standing, an involuntary gesture of respect he immediately regretted. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for coming." "I didn't have much choice, did I?" She remained standing, declining, the chair he gestured toward. "Everyone has choices," Blake replied evenly, "as you so dramatically demonstrated yesterday." A tense silence stretched between them. "Why am I here, Mr. Thornton? To receive threats? Legal action? Or are you simply going to triple my rent and watch me fail?" Blake studied her face, noting the shadows under her eyes. She hadn't slept well either. "Actually," he said, "I have a proposition for you." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "I'm not selling the bakery. I'm not asking you to." Blake circled his desk, reducing the distance between them. "I'm offering you a challenge." "A challenge?" Blake nodded. 1 month. Give me 1 month to convince you that selling is the right decision." Olivia laughed incredulously. "And why would I agree to that?" "Because during that month I'll freeze your rent at its current rate. No increases regardless of the building's new ownership." Olivia's expression faltered. "And after the month?" "If I haven't convinced you, I'll sell the building back to your original landlord at the same price I paid for it. Your situation returns to exactly what it was before I entered the picture." Olivia crossed her arms. "What's the catch?" "The catch, Ms. Bennett, is that you have to spend time with me. Dinners, events, meetings, whatever I deem necessary to demonstrate why taking my offer is the sensible choice. You want me to date you?" The incredulity in her voice was almost offensive. "I want you to understand my world," Blake corrected. "And I want to understand why someone would choose sentiment over security." "This is absurd," Olivia said, but her tone had softened slightly. "Perhaps," Blake conceded. "But what do you have to lose? 1 month of your time in exchange for saving your bakery, either temporarily or permanently depending on your decision." Olivia studied him, her intelligent eyes searching for the trap. "And if I refuse?" Blake shrugged, affecting nonchalance. "Then I proceed as planned. The rent triples next month. You'll be out of business by Christmas." He watched as she processed, his words weighing her limited options. A tiny crease appeared between her eyebrows, a detail he found himself inexplicably fascinated by. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. "Why not just crush me and move on?" The question caught Blake off guard. Why indeed? He wasn't entirely sure himself. All he knew was that something about Olivia Bennett had gotten under his skin, something he couldn't simply dismiss or buy off. "Let's call it professional curiosity," he replied smoothly. "I've never encountered someone so resistant to practical solutions. You mean someone who doesn't worship money? I mean someone who'd choose certain failure over comfortable success, he countered. Olivia's gaze was unwavering. And if, at the end of the month, I still refuse to sell? Then you will have earned my respect, Blake said truthfully. And I'll honor our arrangement. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite trust, but perhaps the recognition of a genuine offer. She extended her hand. 1 month, Mr. Thornton, and not a day more. Blake took her hand, surprised by the strength in her grip. Her skin was warm against his, rough in places from years of honest work. So different from the manicured hands he typically shook across boardroom tables. The agreement starts now, he said. And please call me Blake. The agreement starts now, she echoed, withdrawing her hand. But I'll call you Blake when you've earned it. As she turned to leave, Blake felt a smile tugging at his lips. A genuine one, not the calculated expression he deployed in negotiations. Ms. Bennett, he called after her. Wear something formal tomorrow evening. I'll pick you up at 7. Olivia paused at the door. I have a bakery to run, Mr. Thornton. I don't attend formal events on weeknights. Part of our agreement, he reminded her. Besides, the bakery closes at 6, I checked. For a moment he thought she might argue. Instead, she gave him a measured look. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. After she left, Blake sat at his desk, staring at the contract he'd prepared, the one outlining their arrangement in precise legal terms. He'd intended to make her sign it, to bind her to their agreement with the same formality he applied to all his business dealings. Instead, he placed it in his drawer, choosing to honor something far more powerful than a signature on paper, a promise made eye to eye, with nothing but pride and principle at stake. For the first time in years, Blake Thornton had made a deal, sealed with nothing but his word. You're doing what? Daniel nearly dropped the tray of croissants he was carrying. I'm giving him 1 month to try to convince me to sell, Olivia repeated, arranging pastries in the display case. It buys us time to figure out a long-term solution. And the cost of this time is dating Blake Thornton? Daniel's expression wavered between amusement and concern. It's not dating, Olivia insisted. It's negotiation. An unusual format for negotiation, I'll admit, but... Liv, he's taking you to formal events and picking you up at 7. That's a date. Olivia straightened, brushing flour from her hands. It's strategy, Daniel. He thinks he can charm me into selling. I'm letting him think that while I come up with a plan to save the bakery. And what if his charm works? Daniel wiggled his eyebrows suggestively. Olivia threw a dish towel at him. The man is arrogant, ruthless, and values nothing but money. He's the antithesis of everything Mom and Dad taught us. He's also absurdly good-looking and apparently fascinated by you. He's fascinated by my resistance to his wallet, Olivia corrected, checking her watch. Oh God, it's already 5. I need to close up and get ready. Daniel grinned. Want help choosing something devastatingly attractive to wear to this non-date negotiation? I'm wearing Mom's black dress, Olivia replied, ignoring his teasing. It's the only formal thing I own. Daniel's smile softened. She'd love seeing you in it. At precisely 7 o'clock, a sleek black car pulled up outside the modest apartment above Bloom Street Bakery. Blake Thornton emerged, adjusting his bow tie before approaching the entrance. He'd spent the day in a strange state of anticipation, something he hadn't experienced since, well, he couldn't remember when. He pressed the buzzer labeled Bennett. It's open, came the muffled reply from upstairs. Blake climbed the narrow staircase, noting the worn carpet and peeling paint, details that would normally register as signs of poverty, but now struck him as simply lived in. At the top landing, the door stood ajar. Ms. Bennett? He called, pushing it open. Just a minute. Olivia's voice came from somewhere inside. Blake stepped into the small apartment, his gaze sweeping over the cozy living space. Family. Photos lined the walls. Olivia and Daniel through the years, alongside a couple he assumed were their parents. Books spilled from overcrowded shelves. A half-completed jigsaw puzzle occupied the coffee table. Everything about the space spoke. of life, history, connection. Sorry I'm running late. The afternoon rush was... Blake turned toward her voice and felt the words he'd prepared evaporate. Olivia stood in the doorway wearing a simple black dress that hugged her figure in a way her bakery apron never had. Her chestnut hair, usually hastily tied back, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. Without the flour dusting her cheeks, he could see a spray of freckles across her nose. "You look," he began, uncharacteristically at a loss for words. "Presentable?" Olivia suggested, a hint of defensiveness in her tone. "Beautiful," Blake finished honestly. A flicker of surprise crossed her face before she composed herself. "Thank you. You clean up well yourself, Mr. Thornton." "Blake," he reminded her. "We'll see," she countered, grabbing a small clutch from the side table. "So, where are you taking me on this business meeting?" "The Symphony Gala at Lincoln Center," Blake replied, offering his arm. "The New York elite awaits." Olivia hesitated before taking his arm. "And what exactly am I supposed to do at this gala?" "Observe, listen, learn why the decisions I make are necessary in my world." His voice softened slightly. "And perhaps teach me a thing or two about yours." The Lincoln Center sparkled with thousands of lights, the wealthy and powerful of New York mingling in their finest attire. As Blake escorted Olivia from the car, he felt a strange pride walking beside her. She moved with natural grace, head held high despite being surrounded by women draped in jewels worth more than her bakery's annual revenue. "Mr. Thornton," a silver-haired man approached, champagne in hand. "Didn't expect to see you tonight. Thought you'd be closing that downtown development deal." "Senator Williams," Blake nodded. "May I introduce Olivia Bennett?" The senator's eyes assessed Olivia with practiced political precision. "Bennett? Can't say I'm familiar with the family." "Miss Bennett owns Bloom Street Bakery," Blake explained. "Best sourdough in Manhattan." Olivia's surprise at his knowledge of her bakery's specialty was evident, but she recovered quickly. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Senator." "A baker?" The senator raised an eyebrow at Blake. "How refreshing." "Ms. Bennett is teaching me about small business sustainability," Blake said smoothly. "It's quite enlightening." The senator chuckled, as if Blake had made a clever joke. "Always the businessman looking for angles. Well, enjoy your research." He wandered off toward more influential targets. "Is that how you see me?" Olivia asked quietly. "Research?" Before Blake could answer, they were surrounded by a flutter of socialites, each competing for his attention. Olivia was introduced, and promptly dismissed by most, a curious accessory on the arm of New York's most eligible bachelor, but hardly worth serious conversation. Through it all, Blake noticed how Olivia observed everything with those intelligent eyes, missing nothing. Not the dismissive glances, the whispered speculations, or the calculating assessments of her worth. Blake, darling. A willowy blonde, in a dress that cost more than a luxury car, air-kissed his cheeks. "You've been avoiding my calls." "Vanessa," Blake acknowledged coolly. "I've been busy." "Too busy for the charity board meeting?" Daddy was very disappointed. Her gaze slid to Olivia. "And who's this?" "Olivia Bennett," Blake said. "Olivia, this is Vanessa Harrington. Her father chairs the development committee that's approving my downtown project." Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes. This was one of the connections that made Blake's world turn, the kind of relationship that determined whether projects succeeded or failed. "Olivia owns a charming little bakery," Blake explained. Vanessa's smile remained fixed, but her eyes turned frosty. "How quaint. I don't eat carbs, of course, but I'm sure it's adequate." Olivia smiled sweetly. "The wonderful thing about bread, Ms. Harrington, is that it brings people together. Rich, poor, hunger is the great equalizer." An uncomfortable silence fell. Blake fought the urge to laugh at Vanessa's expression. "Blake, you simply must circulate," Vanessa recovered, tugging at his arm. "The Ashworths are here, and they're considering investors for that ski resort in Aspen. Perhaps later, Blake said firmly, placing his hand over Olivia's on his arm. We were just heading to see the orchestral setup. As they walked away, Olivia glanced up at him. You just turned down a business opportunity, Mr. Thornton. Isn't that against your religion? This time Blake did laugh, a genuine sound that surprised even him. There are better opportunities. Like convincing a stubborn baker to sell her family legacy. Like understanding why that legacy matters more than financial security, he countered. They paused at the edge of the grand hall, watching as the wealthy and powerful formed alliances and rivalries over champagne and canapes. They're all playing a game, Olivia observed. Collecting points in the form of connections, investments, influence. Blake nodded. It's how the world works. The bread of modern society, if you will. It doesn't look very nourishing, Olivia replied softly. Something in her tone made Blake study her more closely. Are you hungry? The hors d'oeuvres here are not for food, Olivia clarified. For substance. Every conversation I've witnessed tonight has been a transaction. Even your introduction of me was strategic. A curiosity to spark conversation. A piece in your game. Her insight struck uncomfortably close to home. Not everything is a transaction, Blake said, surprising himself with the defensive note in his voice. Isn't it? Isn't that exactly what our arrangement is? Before Blake could respond, the orchestra began tuning their instruments, signaling guests to take their seats. As they moved toward the auditorium, a waiter passing with champagne tripped, sending the tray flying directly toward Olivia's black dress. Blake moved instinctively, stepping in front of her. The champagne splashed across his immaculate white shirt and jacket, drawing gasps from nearby guests. The waiter turned pale. Mr. Thornton, I'm so sorry. Please let me... Blake waved him away. Accidents happen, no harm done. Olivia stared at him in astonishment. Your tuxedo is ruined. Blake shrugged, oddly unconcerned about the $12,000 custom Tom Ford now sporting a champagne stain. I have others. Of course you do, Olivia said, but her tone had softened. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small packet. Here. What's this? Baker's secret, she replied, opening the packet to reveal a stain-removing wipe. Professional hazard when you work with chocolate and berries all day. As she dabbed at his shirt, her face close to his chest, Blake inhaled the faint scent of vanilla and cinnamon that seemed to follow her. It was nothing like the expensive perfumes that usually surrounded him. It was real, warm, alive. There, she said, stepping back to assess her work. Not perfect, but less catastrophic. Thank you, Blake said, the words feeling unfamiliar on his tongue. Not because he never said them, but because he rarely meant them. The evening continued with the symphony performance, a masterful rendition of Beethoven that Blake usually would have appreciated as a demonstration of human excellence. Instead, he found himself watching Olivia more than the orchestra, the way her eyes closed during the crescendos, how her fingers moved slightly in time with the violins. The single, tear that escaped when the cellos played their haunting solo. That was breathtaking, she whispered as the final notes faded, seeming to forget for a moment that she was supposed to be resistant to everything in his world. Yes, Blake agreed, though he wasn't looking at the stage. Breathtaking. Later, as they strolled through the Lincoln Center Plaza toward his waiting car, Blake found himself reluctant for the evening to end. Well, he asked, your assessment of how the other half lives? Olivia considered for a moment. There's beauty in your world, Mr. Thornton. The music, the architecture, the artistry. But there's emptiness, too. She looked up at him. Do you have friends or just connections? Relationships or just transactions? The question penetrated deeper than he expected. I have what I need. Do you? Olivia challenged gently. You have everything money can buy. But what about everything it can't? Blake stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Like what? Like belonging somewhere that values you for who you are, not what you own. Like creating something with your hands that brings joy to others, like connections based on genuine care rather than mutual benefit. Romantic notions, Blake dismissed, but without his usual conviction. Says the man who stepped in front of flying champagne to protect a dress he didn't pay for, Olivia pointed out with a smile. That smile, open, genuine, teasing, did something peculiar to Blake's carefully ordered thoughts. For a moment, he couldn't remember why convincing this woman to sell her bakery had seemed so important. Tomorrow, he said suddenly. Tomorrow? Come to my office at noon. I want to show you something. Olivia's smile faded, wariness returning. More gala? Events? No, Blake promised. Something real. As he watched her ascend the stairs to her apartment after driving her home, Blake realized that for the first time in years, he was actually looking forward to tomorrow, not for what it would bring financially, but for the simple pleasure of seeing Olivia Bennett's face when he revealed the surprise he was already planning. It was an unfamiliar feeling, this anticipation without calculation. Unsettling, yet somehow exhilarating. Precisely at noon, Olivia found herself once again in the Thompson Tower lobby. Unlike her previous visits, this time the receptionist greeted her by name. Miss Bennett, Mr. Thornton is expecting you. She handed Olivia a visitor badge. Take the express elevator to the roof. The roof? Olivia asked, puzzled. The receptionist merely smiled. Mr. Thornton's instructions. The elevator climbed 50 floors without stopping, numbers flashing, by as Olivia's stomach fluttered. From the ascent or anticipation, she wasn't entirely sure. When the doors opened, she stepped out into a garden oasis high above Manhattan's concrete jungle. Lush greenery surrounded a central pavilion. Flowers bloomed despite the autumn chill, carefully cultivated in climate-controlled planters. The city spread out in every direction, a breathtaking panorama of urban life. What do you think? Blake's voice came from behind her. When she turned, Olivia was struck by how different he looked in casual attire. Dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that softened his usually sharp edges. It's beautiful, she admitted. Your private retreat from the chaos below? Something like that. Blake gestured toward the pavilion. Come. Lunch is waiting. As they approached, Olivia noticed a table set for two. But what caught her attention was the food. An array of bread, pastries, and baked goods arranged on rustic wooden boards. Is that from Bloom Street Bakery? Yes. Blake pulled out a chair for her. I had Daniel prepare your specialties. He was surprisingly cooperative after I promised this wasn't a corporate espionage mission to steal your recipes. Olivia laughed despite herself. My brother is easily bribed with flattery. And information, Blake added, taking his seat. He was quite curious about our evening at the symphony. I might have mentioned it, Olivia admitted, selecting a piece of her own sourdough. What is all this, Mr. Thornton? Blake, he reminded her. And this is lunch. Simple as that. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Nothing is simple with you. Perhaps that's changing. Blake spread a generous amount of butter on his bread. You asked me last night if I have anything money can't buy. It made me think about what I actually value. And your conclusion? Blake gestured around them. This garden. I designed it myself. Every plant, every path. It's the only place in my empire where profit wasn't the primary motivation. Olivia looked around with new appreciation. It doesn't seem very you, doesn't it? Blake's expression turned thoughtful. My parents were gardeners, not professionally. They could barely afford our apartment in Queens, but they transformed our tiny balcony into something magical, green in a concrete world. This glimpse into his past surprised Olivia. You never talk about your family. There's not much to tell. They died when I was in college, car accident. I built my empire after they were gone. I'm sorry, Olivia said softly. Mine passed 3 years ago. That's when I took over the bakery. A moment of shared understanding passed between them. Is that why you refused to sell? Blake asked. Because it connects you to them. Olivia considered his question. Partly. But it's more than that. The bakery isn't just a business, it's a community. We know our customers' names, their kids, their favorite treats. Mrs. Abernathy comes every Tuesday for her rye bread. The kindergarten class from St. Mary's visits once a month to learn about baking. The homeless shelter on 8th Street gets our day-old bread every evening. Noble, Blake nodded, but financially unsustainable. That's where you're wrong, Olivia countered. We've been sustainable for 30 years because we value more than just profit. We value people. People don't pay bills, Blake argued, but his tone lacked its usual conviction. Actually, they do. Loyalty is currency, Blake. When the economy tanked in 2008, our customers kept coming. When a fire damaged our ovens in 2015, they raised funds to replace them. When my parents died, they brought food to our home for weeks. Olivia leaned forward. What would your investors do if your fortune disappeared tomorrow? The question hung between them, uncomfortable but honest. Point taken, Blake conceded. He stood abruptly. Come with me. I want to show you something else. He led her to a small greenhouse at the edge of the garden. Inside, rows of seedlings grew under carefully calibrated lights. My newest project, Blake explained. Urban farming technology. Sustainable food. Growth in city environments. Olivia examined the plants with interest. This is impressive, but why show me? Because this is the real reason I wanted your property, Blake admitted. The downtown development is just a cover story. I'm planning to convert that entire block into a pilot project. Vertical farming, community gardens, local food production. Your bakery would have been the centerpiece using ingredients grown right there in the building. Olivia stared at him in disbelief. Why didn't you just tell me that? Would you have believed me, the ruthless developer with a secret passion for sustainable agriculture? Blake shook his head. Besides, business is business. Sentiment doesn't factor into negotiations. Doesn't it? Olivia challenged. You just showed me your garden because of sentiment. You kept this part of yourself hidden, the part that cares about something other than profit margins. Blake turned away, touching a seedling with surprising gentleness. The board would never approve this project if they knew the true motivation. They expect returns, not revolution. So you lie to everyone? Your board, your investors? Me? I accomplish objectives, Blake corrected. The method is irrelevant if the outcome benefits all parties. The method is everything, Olivia insisted. Trust is everything. Their eyes met, and for a moment all pretenses fell away. No billionaire, no baker, just two people standing among growing things trying to find common ground. I don't know how to do this any other way, Blake admitted quietly. Yes, you do, Olivia said, stepping closer. You're doing it right now, being honest, being human. Something shifted in Blake's expression, vulnerability replacing calculation. And if honesty doesn't get results? Then at least you've preserved something more valuable than any deal. What's that? Your integrity, Olivia answered. And maybe something else too. The air between them charged with unspoken possibility. Blake moved closer, his hand brushing hers among the seedlings. Olivia, His phone buzzed insistently. Blake ignored it, but the spell was broken. You should answer that, Olivia said, withdrawing her hand. It could be important. Blake checked the screen, his expression hardening. It's the development committee. They've called an emergency meeting about the downtown project. You should go. Blake hesitated, caught between worlds. Come with me. To a board meeting? Olivia laughed incredulously. Yes. A sudden intensity filled his voice. I want them to hear your perspective, why the bakery matters, why community matters. Help me make them understand. Why would they listen to me? Because I'll make them listen. Blake took her hand. Partners. The word hung between them, laden with meaning beyond business. Partners? Olivia agreed softly. The boardroom fell silent as Blake entered with Olivia beside him. Executives in $1,000 suits exchanged puzzled glances. Mr. Thornton, Vernon Porter, the eldest board member, broke the silence. We weren't expecting company. Ms. Bennett isn't company, Blake replied coolly. She's a consultant on the downtown project, and she has my complete confidence. Olivia fought to keep her expression neutral as she took a seat beside Blake at the head of the table. Now, I understand there are concerns about the project timeline? Porter cleared his throat. Yes, construction was scheduled to begin next month, but we've received information that several properties are still holding out, including, ironically, Ms. Bennett's bakery. He gave Olivia a pointed look. Actually, Blake said, I'm proposing a complete reconfiguration of the downtown development. Murmurs rippled through the room. Blake activated the presentation screen and pulled up a new set of renderings. His urban farming concept, reimagined to incorporate the existing neighborhood businesses, including Bloom Street Bakery. Rather than demolishing and rebuilding, we'll renovate and enhance. The bakery becomes our flagship tenant using produce grown in our vertical farming systems. We convert the upper floors to residential, but maintain the street-level character that makes the neighborhood desirable in the first place. This is unorthodox, Porter said carefully. It's innovative, Blake countered, and more importantly, it's sustainable, both environmentally and financially. Our projections show a slower initial return, but greater long-term profitability and significantly better community relations. Community relations don't pay dividends, another board member objected. Don't they? Olivia spoke up, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Thornton Industries has spent millions on PR campaigns trying to improve your public image. Meanwhile, local businesses like mine build community goodwill every day without spending a dime on marketing. Blake nodded. Ms. Bennett's point is excellent. By partnering with established community businesses rather than displacing them, we gain authentic local support no PR firm could buy. For the next hour, Blake and Olivia presented a united vision. His business acumen paired with her community insight, his resources with her practical experience. By the end, even Porter's skepticism had softened. I must say, Mr. Thornton, this approach has an merit, Porter conceded, though it's quite a departure from your usual methods. Sometimes we need new methods to achieve better results, Blake replied, his eyes meeting Olivia's briefly. The vote? One by one, the board members signaled their approval, some more reluctantly than others. As the meeting adjourned, Blake turned to Olivia, his expression a mixture of triumph and wonder. We did it, he said softly. You did it, Olivia corrected. You showed them another way. I couldn't have done it without you. As they left the boardroom, walking side by side through the gleaming corridors of Thompson Tower, Blake seemed different. His stride less domineering, his expression more open. Does this mean our arrangement is concluded? Olivia asked as they reached the elevator. You're not trying to convince me to sell anymore. Not exactly, Blake admitted. But I think we need a new arrangement. Oh? The elevator doors closed, leaving them alone in the small space. Dinner tonight? Blake asked, suddenly looking almost nervous. Not as a billionaire and a baker, just as Blake and Olivia. Olivia studied him, this complex man who had been her adversary, then her reluctant ally, and now perhaps something else entirely. I close at 6, she said finally, her lips curving into a smile. Don't be late. 6 months later, Bloom Street Bakery hummed with activity as the morning rush filled the newly expanded space. Sleek hydroponic gardens lined the walls, growing. Herbs and microgreens used in Olivia's latest creations. The renovation had preserved the bakery's charm while incorporating elements of Blake's sustainable vision. Daniel emerged from the back, carrying a tray of cinnamon rolls. The Thompson Tower order is ready. I'll take it, Blake offered, appearing from the small office he now shared with Olivia. He wore jeans and a Bloom Street Bakery apron, his suit jackets increasingly relegated to board meetings only. The mighty Blake Thornton delivery boy, Daniel teased. What would your shareholders say? They'd say our partnership with Bloom Street has increased quarterly profits by 12%. Blake replied with a grin, loading the pastries into a delivery box. Sustainable business is good business. Is that why you're here every morning at 5 to help with the baking? Olivia asked, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. Blake turned to face her, flour dusting his cheek. You know why I'm here? Their kiss was brief but tender, the easy affection of two people who had found their way to each other against all odds. Gross, Daniel commented cheerfully, heading back to the kitchen. Get a room, preferably one I don't have to walk through, to get to the ovens. Blake laughed, a sound that had become wonderfully common. I should get these to the tower. The executive meeting starts in 30 minutes. Will you be back for lunch? Olivia asked. Try and stop me, Blake replied, stealing another kiss before gathering the delivery box. Oh, and don't forget, dinner at 7. I'm cooking. You? Cooking? Olivia raised a skeptical eyebrow. Should I be concerned? I've been practicing, Blake defended. Besides, I have something important to ask you. The weight of a small, velvet box in his pocket reminded him of just how important that question was. Not a business proposition or negotiation, but the most meaningful arrangement he'd ever propose. As Blake stepped into the sunshine of Bloom Street, nodding to the familiar faces of neighborhood regulars, he reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. His empire was evolving, still profitable, but now with purpose beyond wealth accumulation. His sustainable urban agriculture initiative had launched to international acclaim. The downtown development was becoming a model for community-integrated commercial spaces, but the most profound change was within himself. The cold calculations that had driven him for so long had given way to warmer considerations, not just what could be bought, but what should be valued. Inside his pocket, his fingers brushed against the velvet box once more. Tonight, he would ask Olivia to continue their partnership in the most permanent way possible. Not because it made financial sense, though their combined ventures were thriving, but because in her kitchen, covered in flour and arguing about the proper proofing time for sourdough, he had found something his money could never buy: a home for his heart. Blake Thornton, the man who once believed everything had a price, had finally discovered the priceless, and he wasn't letting it go. The end.